Hello everyone, we're going to read about Jeremy Stilton field trip to Niagara Falls. Oh, how I have been late. Rain, go away. It was the middle of the night. I was in my comfy, cozy bed, trying to sleep. But the rain was beating on my window like a crazy woodpecker. I fell asleep dreaming about birds and pounding ocean waves and huge crashing waterfalls. It rained the whole night. The next morning, I woke up exhausted. I stared at the clock on my bedside table. Holy cheese! I was late. Oh, how I hate being late. I hurled myself into the bathroom. I turned on the shower while brushing my teeth. I combed my whiskers while pulling on my pants. I chopped down my coffee while racing out the door. Rat. I ran at breakneck speed to my aunt's Whitford's house. That is where my little nephew, Benjamin, lives. I had promised to take him to school today. Benjamin giggled when he saw me. I had forgotten to button my pants, and my fur was sticking up all over the place. On the way to school, we passed by my office. I run the most famous daily newspaper on Mouse Island. It's called the Rodent Gazette. I turned on the shower while brushing my teeth. I combed my whiskers while pulling on my pants. I chopped down my coffee while racing out the door. Benjamin tugged on my paw. Uncle, may I take my friend to visit you at the Gazette sometime? He asked. I smiled. My nephew was such a sweet and smart little mouse. Maybe someday he will follow in my paw steps and write a newspaper too. Of course, dear nephew, I said. Finally, we arrived at Benjamin's school. What a zoo! Little rodents were running everywhere. Some held on to their parents' paws. Others tumbled off the school bus. Some zipped up on bicycles. It was so loud I could barely hear myself squeak. Just then, the school bell rang. Ring! I nearly jumped out of my fur, and that was when I spotted a blonde rodent. No, she wasn't. She had just any blunt rodent. She had gorgeous fur. She had a sweet smile, and she had blue eyes the color of a clear summer sky. Good morning, I am Miss Angel Paws, Benjamin's teacher, she said. I took a step toward her, but before I could shake her paw, I tripped over my tail. I landed snout first in the dirt. Don't worry about a thing. I turned to run away with my tail between my legs. I was so embarrassed. Why did I have to make a fool of myself in front of such a pretty mouse? Today, we'll decide where to go on our field trip. I heard Miss Angel Paws announce. Field trip. Suddenly, I had an idea. Maybe the class could come visit me at the Rodent Gazette. Then the teacher would see I wasn't just a clumsy, dim-witted mouse. I strode back into the classroom. Oh, good, Mr. Stilton. You haven't left. I wanted to ask for your advice, Miss Angel Paws squeaked. Do you think this is a good place to go on a field trip? She began writing something on the blackboard. I would love to tell you what I said, but I couldn't read it. No, it wasn't written in ancient squeakies. I just couldn't see a thing. That's because the class bully punk rat had tripped me on my way in. I had lost my eyeglasses. The teacher tapped on the board. What do you think, Mr. Stilton? She repeated. I squinted desperately at the board. I felt like one of the 3 blind mice. Everything looked foggy. Then I thought of something. Maybe Miss Angel Paws wanted to visit the Rodent Gazette. Maybe that's what she had written on the board. Yes, that had to be it. I decided that's why she wanted my advice. I think that's a great idea, I said to the teacher. I would love to take you there. Miss Angel Paws was amazed. Really, Mr. Stilton? She squeaked. Of course, I said. And don't call me Mr. Stilton. Call me Geronimo. But who will pay for it? When can we go? Don't you have to work? Asked the teacher. Don't worry about a thing, I told her. I can take a little time off. You will all be my guests. We can go today if you like. The teacher squealed with delight. She clapped her paws together. Guess what, everyone? Guess what, class? Mr. Stilton, Geronimo has volunteered to take all of us to Niagara Falls for a full week, she announced. We'll leave today. The class cheered. Hooray! We're going to Niagara Falls. Thank you, Mr. Stilton, they cried. I blinked. Niagara Falls? Punkrat pulled at one of my whiskers. Of course, can't you read? Look at the blackboard, he smirked, handing me my glasses. I put them on. I stared at the blackboard. It read, Class trip to Niagara Falls. I gulped. How did I get myself into such a mess? The teacher was already calling the travel agency. Yes, 22 students, a teacher, and Geronimo Stilton. We need 24 round-trip tickets to Niagara Falls. She squeaked into the phone. What could I do? The class was so excited they could hardly sit still. With a sigh, I took out my credit card. It's a topmost Diamond Plus Super Deluxe Extra Superb Gold card. It was a good thing I had it. This trip was going to cost me more than my 2-year subscription to the Cheese of the Month Club. After booking our trip, the teacher waved a yellow notebook in the air. Class, this notebook will be our travel journal, she announced. We will write in it every day. That way, we will never forget this wonderful trip. Are we there yet? Do you know how to get to Niagara Falls? Let me tell you. The falls are located at the border of the United States and Canada. They are very far from Mouse Island. The flight was the longest one of my life. Well, okay, maybe it wasn't the longest, but it was the worst. That's because Scamper spilled orange juice on my computer. Skra smeared ice cream on my tie. David pulled out of my whiskers. Carmen knocked down my suitcase. Esmeralda squeaked my ear off. Tim asked me 317 times, Are we there yet? The whole time I tried desperately to read my books on Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls, located at the border of the United States on the east and Canada on the west. The falls are formed by the waters of the Niagara River. During the journey from Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, the river suddenly drops more than 180 feet to the level of the riverbed, forming falls unique in their power. There are actually 2 different falls at Niagara. One on the Canadian side there is Horseshoe Falls, approximately 2,500 feet wide, while Rainbow Falls on the American side is approximately 1,000 feet in width. In the winter, the river freezes, but the falls do not because they are in continuous movement. Every second, more than 790,000 gallons of water fall. Niagara Falls is also a precious source of electrical energy. Approximately 50% of the water, at mine 75%, is directed to the hydroelectric power plants that supply the United States and Canada with electricity. But the power of the water is creating a problem for the future of the falls. In the past 12,000 years, the water running over the rocks has eroded them and shifted the falls by almost 7 miles. A bit of history. The era of exploration. For centuries, only the Native Americans who lived at what is now the border between the United States and Canada knew about the spectacular falls. The first official news of their existence dates back to the second half of the 16th century. The man who made them famous was Louis Hennepin, a Belgian monk who was part of an expedition organized by the French explorer René Robert Cavelier. Sieur de la Salle, the expedition arrived at the falls in December 1678, and its members were mesmerized by their size and grandeur. At the time, the falls had a drop in level of more than 590 feet and carried twice as much water as they do now. The first tourism was slow to arrive. One of the first important visits it occurred in 1791 when the Duke of Kent, father of the future Queen Victoria of England, stayed at the only building in the area, a small wooden hut. The first groups of tourists began arriving during the mid 18,000. The falls continued to attract important guests such as Geronimo Bonaparte, brother of the famous Napoleon. He came from New Orleans on his honeymoon. From that moment on, Niagara Falls became a popular destination for couples on their honeymoon. Everyone except me. Just before our plane landed, the captain made an announcement. Attention, rodent! We are now passing over the famous Niagara Falls. Take a look out your window if you would like to see a truly spectacular view of the falls, he advised. Everyone wanted to see the falls. Everyone leaped to the window. Everyone saw the spectacular view, except me, except me, except me, except me, except me. I was being suffocated by the throe of screaming, jumping mouselets. They had pressed themselves up against my window. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't see a thing. Finally, the plane landed. We were in Toronto, Canada from there. We climbed on a bus. We rode on the bus for about an hour and a half. Then we arrived at the falls. As we pulled up, the driver made an announcement. We have now reached the famous Niagara Falls. Look out your window if you would like to see a truly spectacular view of the falls, he said. Everyone wanted to see the falls. Everyone leaped to the window. Everyone saw the spectacular view. Except me, except me, except me, except me, except me. A throng of screaming mouselets was crawling all over me. They plastered themselves up against my window. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't see a thing. The bus stopped. I got off. The roaring sound of the falls was incredible. I tried to take a picture. Everyone wanted to take a picture of the falls. Everyone got his or her camera ready. Everyone snapped away at the falls except me. Oh, if only I could get away from those screaming mouselets. They were all over me. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't see a thing. The bus took us to the city of Niagara Falls and the lake. It was already dark. I do not know how to set up a tent. What a day! I was tired. I was hungry. I stumbled off the bus. I couldn't wait to sink into a nice soft bed. I couldn't wait to put on my fluffy cat fur slippers. I couldn't wait to order from room service. Is the hotel nearby? I yawned. I'm pooped. Miss Angel Paws looked shocked. Hotel? Why, Mr. Geronimo? We have come to enjoy the great outdoors. We're not going to a hotel. We're going to camp out, she squeaked. My eyes opened wide. I looked around. Miss Angel Paws wasn't joking. We were standing in the middle of the wilderness. Did I mention I'm not such of an outdoor mouse? Yes. Well, who's going to set up the tent? I stammered. Miss Angel Paws rolled her eyes. You are, of course, Mr. Geronimo, she said. I made a quick calculation. There were 24 of us. Each tent would have 4 mice. That means I had to set up 6 tents for the little mice. Then we will need 1 tent for me and 1 for Miss Angel Paws. Plus, we needed 1 big tent for all of us to eat breakfast in. Holy cheese! I couldn't set my up 9 tent. Just then the little mice began whining. Come on, we're tired. I couldn't make heads or tails of the tent. I sat up, one hand inside out. I zipped myself up in another and couldn't get out. Then I whacked my paw with a hammer. I give up, I screeched. Did I mention I'm not much of an outdoor mouse? I sat down on a rock. I took off my glasses so I could sob freely. Help! I can do this! Just then my little nephew Benjamin whispered in my ear. Call Aunt Dia. She always knows what to do, he suggested. I dried my tears. Good idea, I agreed. I guess you could save my sister. Dia is the opposite of me. She loves a challenge. A half hour later, after I talked to Dia on the phone, all of the tents were ready. Hooray! Yelled the little mice. Isn't it great sleeping in a tent, Mr. Geronimo? Miss Angel Paws said. I do not know how to cook at a campsite. I was so tired I could only nod. Then I heard a low grumble. Was it a bear? Was it a fox? Was it a ravenous, rodent-eating monster? No, it wasn't just my tummy. I was starving. So, who will do the cooking? I asked. Why, you will, of course, Mr. Geronimo, Miss Angel Paws said. The little mice began screaming. Come on, we're starving, they whined. I sighed. I touched to the brook to get some water, but on the way back, I tripped. The water flew out of the bucket. I decided to let the fire started, but the wood was too damp. It will not light. I went to get some more wood and accidentally stepped on the egg carton. Crunch! Then I noticed an army of ants. They were devouring all of the bread. I give up, I squeaked. Did I mention I'm not much of an outdoor mouse? Try calling Aunt Dia again, Benjamin whispered. She'll know what to do. A half hour later, the fire was ready. Now if I could just get the ants off the bread. Come on, we have to go. After a week, I fell asleep with my snout in my plate. I woke up with a start. Psst, psst, Mr. Geronimo, a voice called. It was Miss Angel Paws. Mr. Geronimo, you, forget to set up a bathroom, she whispered. I peeled. A bathroom? Come on, we have to go, the little mouse squeaked. This time, I know exactly what to do. I called my sister. I wasn't proud. I was desperate. After all, who knows how to set up a bathroom outdoors? Of course, my sister figured it out half an hour later. The bathroom was finished, and so was I. I crawled into my sleeping bag and slept like a 10-ton brick of stale cheese. Even a starving mouse couldn't have moved me. Rumph, bzz, rumph, bzz, rumph. What a stink! What a smell! What a stench! I woke up in the middle of the night. An awful stench surrounded me. It smelled worse than my cousin Trev's rancid fish soup. It smelled worse than my grandmother one whisker's disgusting Brussels sprout roofie. I opened my eyes. A black and white furry creature with two pretty little eyes stared back at me. I jumped out of the sleeping bag, squeaking at the top of my lungs. Flashlights snapped on all over the campsite. What a stink! What a smell! What a stench! I heard other campers cry. I couldn't have agreed more. I started to chime in when I heard some more voices. Where is it coming from? One said. That tent there, another answered. That's a rodent from New Mouse City, the one named Geronimo Stilton. Third cried. You really need to clean up his act. Someone else piped up. Yeah, I wonder if he knows what the word bath means. Another muttered. I turned beet red. How could they talk about me that way? I'm no severe mouse. I love taking baths. But there was no time to think about a bubble bath now. I had to defend myself. I'm not the stinky one, I started to explain. It was that creature. It had black fur with a white stripe. Punkrat stuttered. What creature? I don't see any creature, he smirked. Then he began to sing in a high-pitched voice. Geronimo sees things in the dark. A slug, a squirrel, a giant shark. Benjamin grabbed my paw. Uncle, did you really see a creature? He whispered. When I nodded, he stuck his snout in the tourist guide. I guess he was pretending he didn't know me. I couldn't blame him. Everyone thought I was losing my whiskers. At that moment, Benjamin began squeaking. He held up the book. It showed a picture of the creature. See, my uncle was right, the nephew told Red. The creature he saw is called a skunk. A wall of rushing water. The next morning, we woke up at dawn. After breakfast, we hiked along the river. I was tired. You probably already know that I am not a morning mouse. But I was also excited. Finally, I will be able to see Niagara Falls. Our paws crunched through the thick autumn leaf of yellow, red, and brown. The air smelled crisp and fresh. Don't you just love autumn? I do. I love everything about it. Oh, except for Halloween. I'm not big on scary holidays. I started thinking about the Halloween party my cousin Trap was throwing this year. He said he was going to dig up a real skeleton and serve frozen eyeballs for dessert. Just then, I felt like my own eyeballs had frozen. Well, my eyebrows and the rest of my body, that is. I was staring at the tremendous wall of rushing water. We had reached the falls. The river rumbled like thunder. A magnificent rainbow made a bridge over the falls. Ah, oh, what an unbelievable sight. I could have stood and admired the falls all day. I just had one little problem. The rushing water was getting to me. With a squeak, I took off in search of a bathroom. All aboard. A few minutes later, I was back at the falls. Miss Angel Paws was making an announcement. We will now board a boat called the Maid of the Mist that will take us to the falls. She told the class, please do not lean over the side. We put on shiny raincoats, then we climbed aboard the boat. It sailed straight up the Niagara Falls. Everything looked so different from below. A mist rose up from the spring lake water. We were so close to the falls. I dug my pants and paws into the railing of the deck. The water churned below us. I was glad we were all safe on the boat. The sprays of water soaked my fur. Oh well, no one could say I was stinky now. I looked around. We were surrounded by fog. I felt like I was in a dream. Just then I remembered a story that I had read about Niagara Falls. I told it to the class. The legend of the Maid of the Mist. Many years ago, a tribe of Native Americans lived peacefully near the Niagara Falls River. In order to protect themselves from disease and hunger, the tribe always asked the god of thunder, who lived in a cave under the falls, for protection. One day, the god saw Lilewala, the daughter of the great chief Eagle Eye, and decided to keep her for himself. The Native Americans offered him canoes full of flowers, fruit, and game, but the god insisted on marrying her. Lilewala was courageous and decided to protect her tribe by marrying the god. She showed up dressed in white with a garland of flowers. She boarded a white birch canoe and briefly hurled herself over the falls, but when she fell from the top, the god stretched out his arms and saved her. The courageous young girl remained forever in the cave under the falls. She was called the Maid of the Mist because at the base of the falls there was always a dense mist made of droplets of water. Don't move, Red. When I finished telling the story, I looked up. The boat was returning to shore. Right then, I noticed something. I was quiet, too quiet. I began to get the feeling that something or someone was missing. I ran up and down the boat, counting the little mice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I was right. We were short one rodent. Can you guess who was missing? Here's a hint. He was louder mouse in the class and a pain in my tail. That's right, it was Red. Suddenly I spotted the little pest on the shore. He must have been left behind as the boat took off. Don't move, Red, I yelled. It's dangerous. We'll come and pick you up. But at that very moment, disaster struck. Red slipped on a wet rock he tumbled into the water. A dive in the icy water. A little voice inside my head began screaming at me. Don't just stand there, save him, it yelled. I dove into the water. That's when the other little voice began screaming. It shrieked, Geronimo, are you crazy? You're not a swimmer. You can barely do 2 laps at the Darville. Why? I see cold water soaked into my ear, my nose, even at my throat. It blocked out the voices. All I could think about was saving Punkrat. I swam desperately towards him. I could see his little head bobbing up and down in the wave. His little paws waved in the air. Up and down, wave. Up and down, wave. He looked like he was doing a perfect water ballet dance. I wondered if he had ever thought about taking lessons. I was still thinking about water ballet when things went from bad to worse. Yep, Punkrat that went under. What could I do? I dove down after him. It was dark under the water. I could hardly see a thing. Everything was so fuzzy. Everything was so blurry. Maybe I need a new pair of glasses, I thought. Then I realized I wasn't wearing glasses. I had lost them in the water. Luckily, in my paws felt something. It was Punkrat's tail. I grabbed it. I pulled him up. Someone threw me a life buoy from the boat. Then they pulled us in. Cheesecake. We were safe. You are not a mouse. You are a hero. The boat captain tapped me on the back. Nice going, Mr. Selton, he exclaimed. Then he held the crowd in a chorus of cheers. Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! He shouted. A large, beefy horse drew his paws around me. That was beautiful, he squeaked. Who will think a scringly little rodent like you could do something like that? He embarrassed me in a crunching hug. I felt all the bones in my body snapping. Then I accidentally stepped on my foot. Ouch! I screamed at that very moment. I screamed at the top of my lungs. I quickly wrapped my foot in the nephew's bandana. Next, the little old lady mouse gave me a kiss. She had tears in her eyes. Brave young man, you are not a mouse. You are a hero, she exclaimed. While she was kissing me, the handle of her purse went into my eyes. Ouch! I screamed at the top of my lungs. My eyes felt like it was on fire. I tried a handkerchief around my head to soak up the tears. Now I looked just like a pirate. The whole class stared at me. I could tell they were impressed. Little mice love pirates. You're so lucky to have such a cool uncle, Sakura told Benjamin. My nephew beamed with pride. Punkrat and I were wet and shivering. A sailor wrapped us in a blanket. He gave us each a cup of hot chocolate. My paws were shaking too much. I spilled mine all over me. Ouch! I screamed at the top of my lungs. Oh, when will this day come to an end? Friend, forever. When Punkrat stopped shivering, he wrapped his paws around my neck. Thank you, Geronimo. You saved my life. I'm sorry I played all those dumb tricks on you, he judged. I tried to say something, but I couldn't squeak. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Punkrat was squeezing my neck so tightly I was choked. At last, he let go. Then he shook my paws. Friend, forever, the little rodent squeaked. I gave him a weak smile. Forever, I croaked, still gasping for breath. Isn't it magnificent, Geronimo? Before we got off the boat, Benjamin spotted something floating in the water. It was my glass. I reached over the side to finish them out and splash, I fell in. I swam to shore. I was wet. I was cold, but I could see. I was in mouse heaven. I wondered if my glasses had missed me as much as I missed them. We hiked back toward the camp. We took a shortcut through the wood. I looked around. The leaves on the trees were such beautiful colors: red, orange, brown, gold. If I were an artist, I would have painted up to a picture. But I'm not. In fact, I was the only mouselet at Little Trails Academy to ever fail paw painting. I trotted along, breathing in the fresh, crisp air. I really am a nature lover at heart. Isn't it magnificent, Geronimo? Miss Angel Paw said. Benjamin and his friend were running around. At last, I was alone with the teacher. Teacher, I decided now was my chance. I had to find out more about this beautiful mouse. Maybe we could go out after we dinner sometime. I wondered if she would like less quivery at my favorite French restaurant. So, Miss Angel paused. I began. Shaylee, are you married? Miss Angel paused, shook her head. A big tear rolled down her fur. Then she collapsed in a fit of sobs. Oh, why did I have such rotten luck with my famous mice? If they weren't crying, they were running away from me. The teacher pulled herself together. Sorry, she sniffed. I am not married, but I was in love once a long, long time ago. Carefully, she opened a locket that she wore around her neck. Inside was a whisker. This is his whisker, Miss Angel paused explained. It is all I have left of him. The last time I saw him, he was being chased by an angry cat. I will never fall in love again. I sighed. What a sad story. I felt bad for the Whiskers mouse. I felt bad for Miss Angel paused. Right then it began to rain. The water poured down in bucket. Love under a cheese-colored umbrella. Suddenly, a mouse appeared out of nowhere. He was carrying a large cheese-colored umbrella. Please allow me, said softly to Miss Angel Paws. He held the umbrella over her head and smiled. The two rodents stared at each other. They stared and stared. I wondered what the staring contest was all about. Then I noticed something. The mouse with the umbrella was missing a whisker. Could it be? I wondered. Just then the two mice clasped paws. It's you, they squeaked together. Well, that answered that question. It was all pretty amazing. I mean, what were the chances Miss Angel Paws will find her lost love at Niagara Falls? That's like finding a cheese cracker in an overflowing garbage can. It takes more than just disgusting digging, it takes luck. I was happy for the teacher. At least someone was having a lucky day. I, on the other paw, was not. The rain seeped into my fur. It dribbled down my whiskers. It poured into my ear. I was getting soaked. I could see the little mice huddled together in a dry cave of a hat. Meanwhile, the two love mice had the cheese-colored umbrella to protect them. Not that they seemed to notice it was raining. They looked like they were under some kind of magic spell. The kind that makes you forget where you are. I sighed. I wish I were under a magic spell. Then I will forget I was standing outside in the middle of a torrential rainstorm. A real gentle mouse. That night, we sat around a crackling campfire. It turned out Miss Angel Paw's friend was a forest ranger. His name was Gentle Mouse. I wanted not to like him. After all, I came on this trip just to spend more time with Miss Angel Paws, but how could I hate a rodent with a name like that? Gentle Mouse knew a lot about nature. He showed us a maple leaf. From this tree, we get maple syrup, Gentle Mouse explained. He told the class how they could start their own collection of dried leaves. Cheap, 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 cheap. The next morning, we went for hiking through the woods. I tried to keep up with the group, but I kept tripping over rocks and twigs. Did I mention I'm not much of a sport mouse? Gentle Mouse pointed out that there are different plants along the way. This is a sugar maple, a leaf it's on the Canadian flag, he explained. This is a chestnut tree. Has anyone ever tried a chestnut? Just then I saw two beady eyes blinking behind the bushes. Look at fog, Gentle Mouse whispered excitedly. I gulped. I was okay with the plants, but wild animals weren't exactly my cup of chatter. They can be a little scary, no, make them downright terrifying. I scampered past the fox. Gentle Mouse was busy pointing out other animals. We saw a beaver, a raccoon, and even a moose with huge antlers. I couldn't believe how many wild animals we came across. Suddenly, I heard a loud chirping chip chip. I followed the chirping to an oak tree. A little bird was flying on the ground. Help! It's fallen and it can't get up, I told Gentle Mouse. What shall we do? The forest is on fire. Gentle Mouse showed us how to make a nest using a box and a tower. We found some seed and fed them to the bird. It let out a happy chirp. Then it started smoking. Holy cheese! What was in those seeds? Then I realized the smoke wasn't coming from the bird. It was filling the air around us. Fire! I shouted someone. Gentle Mouse came. He called for help on his cell phone. Hurry, the forest is on fire, he cried. Someone must have left the campfire burning. Send a plane right away. Gentle Mouse told everyone to stay calm. We divided us up into two teams. The first team dug fire trenchers. If we cut down all of the plants, the fire will have nothing to burn, Gentle Mouse explained. The second team formed a long chain that ended at a nearby brook. The first mouse in line filled a pail with water. Then he passed it down the line. The last mouse in line threw the water on the flames. We were like packed rats. But the heat was becoming unbearable. My fur was scorched. The smoke was making me choke. Suddenly, a miracle happened. We heard the sound of engines. It was a plane carrying an enormous trunk filled with water. The plane dumped the water onto the flames and then left to pick up more water from the lake. We were saved, but before we could celebrate, Gentle Mouse began shouting, Has anyone seen Miss Angel Paws? I saw her running toward those bushes. I think she was trying to help us wanted fawn, Kate cried. Don't worry, Miss Angel Paws, Gentle Mouse yelled. I'll save you. He disappeared in a cloud of smoke. A few minutes later, he returned. He was carrying the teacher in his paws. My hero, giggled Miss Angel Paws. He saved the fawn too. I felt a twinge of jealousy. Why couldn't I be someone's hero? Still, I had to admit, Miss Angel Paws and Gentle Mouse were a match made in mouse heaven. Have I got a surprise for you? That night, the two love mice made an announcement. Can you guess what it was? Yes, they had decided to get married. Hooray! Cried the class. Everyone was so excited, but they were even more excited when they heard that Miss Angel Paws and Gentle Mouse wanted to get married immediately. They had been missing each other for years. They didn't want to wait any longer. We can do it right here in Niagara Falls, Miss Angel Paws squeaked. We put our heads together to plan the ceremony. It will have to be pretty simple. There will be no wedding gown on or fancy wedding cake. After all, where could we get a dress and a cake in the middle of the wilderness? I called my sister to ask for her advice. As I said, that mouse just loved a challenge. An hour later, my cell phone rang. It was Tia. Hey, Gary Berry, have I got a surprise for you? She squeaked. I gulped. A surprise? From my sister? The last time she surprised me, she captured my whole apartment in pink cat fur. Flap, 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 vroom. Right at that instant, I heard a strange noise over my head. Flap, 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 vroom. Flap, 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 vroom. Flap, 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 vroom. I looked up and screamed. A pink helicopter was circling above me. Pink sugar-coated almond rained down all around me. Pink invitation with the braids and groom's name on them flew through the air. A bunch of thorny pink roses hit me in the snout. Youch! So this was my sister's surprise. I was relieved. I'll take a torn in the snout over that awful pink carpeting any day. I told everyone who the nudie mouse flying the plane was. My sister loved pink, I added. At that moment, an enormous pink package struck me on the head. Before I fainted, I noticed a note on the side of the box. It said, Store Angel for Angel Paws and Gentle Mouse. When I came to the others were busy opening Tia's package, no one gave me a second glance. I snorted. So much for mousely manners. It was clear that all anyone cared about was the box. That was inside. It was a full-length wedding dress and a toque. Now everyone was happy. Well, everyone except me. That is, a lump that formed on top of my head. It was the size of a mega huge ball of mozzarella. Congratulations! Barbecue time! After the wedding ceremony, we headed back to the campsite. When we arrived, we were overwhelmed by a delicious smell. I sniffed the air. Could it be? Yes, it smelled just like a backyard barbecue. I ran toward the campsite. That's when I spotted a big poster leaning against a rock. It said, "Barbecue. Come one, come all. Get ready for the best barbecue this side of Niagara Falls. Brought to you by the best chef in the world." I scratched my fur. There was only one rodent I knew who was the fool of himself. There was only one rodent I knew who was that irritating, such a pain. My cousin Trap. Just then a pair of whiskers emerged from behind a cloud of smoke. A pot-bellied rodent wearing a loud Hawaiian print shirt stood behind a smoking grill. He waved a greasy spatula at me. "Yo, Germeister, what's squeaking?" he smirked. "Love the lump on your head? It's so you." I rolled my eyes. Yep, it was my cousin. Trap, all right. Have I mentioned he a total pain in my tail? I started to explain about the bump on my head when Trap interrupted me. "Listen up, rodent," he called. "You're about to taste the best cooking around, so don't drag your feet. It's time to eat. Now that you're found, Trap, you can throw away your map. That Trap. T as in look out, tongue, you're in for a treat. R as in ready or not. Here it comes. A as in ask me if I can cook. P as in pay attention. The name is Trap. Yes, there's one thing you should know about my cousin. He's in love. No, not with another mouse, with himself. Still, I had to admit his barbecue was delicious. I stuffed my snout like my Uncle Cheese belly at the make your own cheese Sunday buffet. After dessert, Dia took me on a helicopter ride over the falls. It really was a spectacular sight too. Too bad I got sick on the way down. I knew I shouldn't have eaten 3 pieces of cheesecake. Little mice around the world. Finally, it was time to go home. We boarded the plane headed for Mouse Island. It was another long flight. The little mice climbed all over me, and they sang songs at the top of their lungs. I didn't get one bit of rest. Still, I was kind of sad when we landed. I was going to miss those little rodents. As we were waiting for our luggage, I made an announcement. "You are all invited to visit me at the Rodent Gazette," I told the class. "You can see how we put the newspaper together. You can see how a book gets made." "Hooray!" the little mice cheered. Then Rat grabbed my paw. "I'm going to miss you, Mr. Geronimus Mouse," he sobbed. I patted his head. "I'll miss you too, Rat," I said. But remember my name is Geronimo Stilton." "Of course, Mr. Geronimity," Rat squeaked. I tried to remain calm. "Geronimo Rat," I repeated. "That Geronimo." Rat smirked. "That's what I said, Mr. Geronimus," he giggled. I gave up. What else could I do? Rat flung his paws around my neck. He really wasn't such a bad little mouse. In fact, he was just like a lot of little mice around the world, full of life and love, and oh, of course, cheese. To travel is better than to arrive. We headed for the airport exit. A school bus was waiting for Miss Angel Paws and her class. I waved goodbye. "I'll take a taxi home," I told them. A line of cheese-colored cabs waited at the curb. But for some reason, my paws didn't want to budge. My back felt like it weighed to a ton. An overwhelming feeling of sadness came over me. It had been such an exciting adventure, and now it was over. Just then, I remembered a line from one of my favorite authors. His name was Robert Louis Stevenson. Do you know him? He wrote a book called Treasure Island. Anyway, he said that to travel is better than to arrive. Well, I don't know if that is true all of the time. Usually, I am thrilled to get back to my comfy, cozy mouse hole, but this time, I still had the travel bug in me. And so, I did what any smart mouse will do. I turned around and headed right back into the airport. Geronimo Stilton, book a trip to Blue Cheese Island. I hear it's supposed to be beautiful here this time of year. Blue skies, blue waters, and lots of blue cheese. I couldn't wait to get there. So today we finished the book. So bye bye for now, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.